things are now becoming part of our everyday life in America. But when you and I were growing up, the thought of someone being raped on the steps of a government building, someone being set on fire, this would be wall-to-wall coverage because this was so outside the norm of the culture of the 70s and the 80s and the early 90s. Am I wrong to say that the American people are being conditioned and are falling for the conditioning where they're now not shocked by it, but even that, it doesn't get the attention. It gets ignored by the media, and even on social media, I haven't seen a lot. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. This is being normalized. The first time somebody gets set on fire, there's a lot of coverage. There's, especially when there's video, it's all very shocking. Then the second time it happens to a woman, well, I guess it happens. When it happens to a homeless guy, well, we don't even pay too much attention to it because now setting people on fire is just something that goes on. It's just a new normal. And this is absolutely how horrifying things are normalized. The Democrats, the left, does this on a regular basis. They teach us to accept that crime of this kind is the new normal. No, for a while, New York City, when you just had a random stabbing on the subway, that was news. These days, random stabbings are not news anymore. You had a guy committing necrophilia on the subway. That was big news. The second or third time it will happen, it will no longer be news. And we are being taught to accept, we're being slowly boiled like lobsters in a pot, that these conditions are normal. And the Democrats and the police will come back and say, well, it's social conditions. We can't do very much about it except just to throw more welfare at the problem. We can't actually lock up criminals because that's just not going to work. You had the Hennepin County DA in Minnesota, Minneapolis specifically, where the Somali crime wave is, coming out and saying, we can't just, use the old and busted method of locking them up and throwing away the key. You know what? That method was actually really great because when you lock a guy up, he can no longer set anybody on fire. It's incredible.
Yeah, amazing how that works. Logan, I'm going to be asking Logan over the next 2 days to pull a lot of stuff at a moment's notice. Is it possible, Logan, we can pull the first part of the documentary Siege, where we have Daniel Greenfield talking about civil war in America? I believe that's in the very first part. I think I opened the documentary with Daniel Greenfield talking about we're in a civil war. I want to play a little bit of that in just one moment when you have it ready. Oh, and the Siege book, by the way, is now in the vault. So we turned that into a book. My documentary Siege, Sabotage, my book on Hamas, all of these have come out now. They're all in the vault. You don't need to buy them. You can get them at worldviewtube.com/vault as part of your membership. I want to talk to you about that idea of civil war, because you were one of the first people to say we are involved in a civil war. And that Siege documentary of mine that you opened that documentary, I grabbed a speech I think you gave at a Tea Party group or something. And I opened the documentary with that. And I even had some, I won't say names, so I'm not looking to ridicule anybody, but I had some very well-respected people who said, you really want to put Civil War and World War III in the subtitle of your documentary. I was talking about globalism, World War III, Civil War, globalism, and a few other things in the subtitle. And a couple well-respected people said, do you really want to put World War III? And then another one said, do you really want to put Civil War? And I'm like, well, you don't think we're already involved at a level of World War III with propaganda by our enemies, cyber hacking, the weaponization of economics, the economic warfare that's going on, funding terrorist groups and propaganda inside our country and universities. I said there are various types of war, and these are all the things you do as you are going to war. And then as far as the Civil War goes, well, what do you think is happening when we have the lawlessness by elected officials and by police officials, and at the time, lawlessness by our FBI and other government agencies? What do you call this, if not a civil war on the American people? Well, you brought up Minneapolis. You brought up Minnesota, the Somali problem there, because I think this is more indication we are involved in a civil war, and the police, law enforcement, is going out of their way to stop the government to doing its rightful position constitutionally and biblically, Romans 13, reward the righteous, punish the wicked, make a stable and just society. They're now going out of their way to stop removing people from our country who are known rapists, serial rapists, child rapists, gangbangers, running drugs for their cartels, now involved in $1 billion scam in Minnesota alone. And now you have a police official saying this. Watch and listen, and Daniel will respond. To stop the government. I think I got another audio running somewhere, so let me turn that off. I think I know exactly where it's at. That was me talking with a few second delay. Did that take care of that, Logan? I took care of that. Now I'm going to go back and find the clip. Here we go. Here it is. Minneapolis police official. Here we go.
Masked, that they're not sure if they're law enforcement, that they may be kidnapping people. Like, we have had those reports. I want to be clear to the community. The community should know that if you see something like that, that is legitimate, that you don't know if someone is law enforcement, you should call 911. And you should provide as much information as possible, because let's not forget, we very recently had tragedy in this state by someone who was purporting to be law enforcement. So please, let's be clear. That's something everyone should report, and that we will immediately respond to, and we will document, whether it's somebody's not sure if there's a kidnapping happening, somebody's not sure if that there's law enforcement present or not. And that's something else, that's additional policy requirements that we are implementing, that we will document and report these types of things anytime that we hear it, and reminding our officers of their duty to intervene. So if there is anything that is, a violation of someone's human rights or civil rights, excessive force or anything like that, they absolutely have a duty to intervene as police officers.
Wow, intervene. Now, wait a minute. I agree to not violate people's civil liberties or rights, but is he implying that his officers are going to intervene when ICE is in the Twin Cities arresting these Somali immigrants? Is that a violation of their civil rights? I mean, the United Nations wants open borders. That's what Agenda 2030 is all about. Is that a civil right to go anywhere in the world you want, whenever you want? So, I mean, who defines these terms is the question. Is he saying that Minneapolis police are going to oppose ICE? Is that what they're doing up there?
So tellingly, he uses civil rights and human rights. We have a legal definition of civil rights. We don't have a legal definition of human rights. That's not American law. That's international law. That's a UN term. So under the UN's idea of human rights, we can't deport illegal aliens at all. So what's been going on here is part of a bigger picture, which is that politicians, Democrat politicians, have been pushing local police forces to intervene to block ICE from operating. We've seen that in action in Portland. We've seen that push in California. We've seen that in New York. They're actively trying to push the police to engage in interventions. Now, local on-the-ground police generally understand this is a very, very bad idea. But at the same time, we've seen some counter behavior. Particularly in Portland, we've seen the police actively working to protect some of the anti-ICE rioters, which is unfortunately all too normative. Basically, if you're a leftist rioter, you get police protection. If you're opposed to them, you get arrested. I've seen this on the ground myself in LA back in the day when these people were harassing synagogues. So when it comes to ICE, though, this is a very trickier area, specifically because, this is Civil War territory. Having local law enforcement confront federal law enforcement. And again, most law enforcement officials locally understand that this is very dangerous territory, but they're trying to get themselves pushed into standing in the way there. And that potentially is a crisis situation, because it only takes one idiot trying to pull a gun on ICE to create a major, major incident.
Now, I want to go to the whole issue of civil war. You said in this clip we have a civil war. People say, well, there's no one shooting at each other. And you say, well, that's how a civil war ends, right? Before I go to some of this clip from our documentary in 2019 with you, is this not indications more of a civil war when local and state officials are going against the legal? I'm not talking about local or state officials resisting tyranny. They have every right constitutionally, morally to do that. Apparently, they didn't want to do that during the Biden administration when the FBI was kicking down the doors of pro-lifers and other people and grannies because they simply showed up on the Capitol lawn. Some of them didn't even go in the building to practice their freedom of speech and right to public assembly. So there was no talk of this, right? There was no talk of opposing tyranny when many of these blue states wanted to shut people down with COVID and lockdowns and shut down schools and churches and how many people get having your home. But now, all of a sudden, these folks want to stop a legitimate function of the federal government, which is to get terrorists, would-be terrorists, and known terrorists out of here, stop would-be rapists and known rapists and murderers from getting out of jail who are illegal, holding them so we can deport them and send them out of here. No, they let them go. They stop the ICE procedures. And then, of course, these people go on to rape and murder and kill. Now, is that all part of a civil war scenario when you have local and state governments working against legitimate federal policies to try to stop the foreign enemies that have sent in their criminals and thugs to create chaos? Is this not a sign we're in a civil war?
Sorry. Back when I did that speech at the Tea Party, I used the term cold civil war, which is before the shooting starts. And, these days, nobody's really arguing with that, the concept of a cold civil war. And what's happening in that situation is two scenarios which can go together. First is you've got a zero-sum game between two factions, both of whom want to solidify absolute total control of power in the country. The second scenario is when you have local conflict and undermining of any kind of functional authority to create chaos and splinter any ability to manage the country. The Democrats have managed to combine both, and it's most graphically obvious with illegal aliens, with mass border migrations. So in the past, what they've said is states cannot do any kind of immigration enforcement. That's the job of the federal government. And of course, the federal government refuses to do the job of immigration enforcement. So the Obama administration, the Biden administration would go after Arizona or Texas for trying to restrict illegal aliens. Under Biden, we actually saw the Border Patrol being tasked with removing any kind of fencing put up by the state of Texas to keep illegal aliens out of the country. So you have, on the one hand, anarchy. On the other hand, you have tyranny, which is the anarcho-tyranny situation that you have. And the purpose of this is ultimately to fundamentally alter the country. Bringing in massive numbers of illegal aliens is the basis for democratic power. When you look at the actual demographic basis, Democrats really have an increasingly tenuous grip on political power. Their whole principle is really bringing massive numbers of illegal aliens, packing them into districts they control, and really in a kind of a recap of the Civil War, using these people, many of whom cannot even vote and don't actually vote, to create districts that Democrats can control because they don't actually ask about citizenship on the census. This was a big battle that in the first Trump administration. So the result is they have a lot of fake districts packed with illegal aliens that they use as the basis for their political power. And they have to maintain this flow. And the Biden administration knew what it was doing when it was bringing these massive numbers of illegal aliens. And of course, creating crime is a plus there, because the more chaos you create, the more people are terrorized, the more likely they are to just be subjugated, which is also something we see in major blue cities. People wonder, why do they keep voting for leftists? One major reason they keep voting for leftists is because everything looks terrible, and they look to the guy furthest to the left, like Mamdani, as offering some kind of solution because there isn't meaningful competition there. So the result is the left solidifies its grip on power and eliminates any of the checks and balances, and it tries to have it both ways at the same time. The Trump administration, though, is pushing back on it really for the first time.
So have we moved from a cold civil war to a hot civil war?
We're on the boundary. It could take very little at this point to trigger a hot civil war, because both sides are kind of playing with tinderbox there. For example, the Democrats kept talking about how they were going to add two states. They were going to add D.C. and Puerto Rico as states, rig the Senate, and effectively rig future presidential elections. If they were to actually go ahead and try to do that, which at this point I think is increasingly likely they will, that would be a civil war scenario. If they pack the Supreme Court, potential civil war scenario.
Listen to this comment. This was a comment made by Democrat Senator Mark Warner, talking about the uniformed military may have to save us from President Trump. Listen to this.
Unprecedented disrespect when they were all brought to get a pep rally in front of Hegseth and Trump. This is an administration that's fired, uniform generals from the head of the NSA, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I think in many ways, the uniformed military may help save us from this president and his lame people like Hegseth, because I think their commitment is to the Constitution and obviously not to Trump, and I expect Bradley to adhere to that.
So, Senator, let's go a little further.
So there you go. What do you make of that comment? We may have to have the uniformed military may have to save us from the president. Add that to what's going on with the seditious six, as they're called. Again, is this all set up for undermining our military, the command? And again, they're really going after Pete Hegseth, related to the striking of these boats out of Venezuela. There seems to be a concerted effort to really destroy the Pentagon, the military, the command structure, following orders. What do you make of this, and how does this play into our Civil War scenario?
Well, Secretary of Defense Hegseth is the number one target after President Trump of everybody, and I mean everybody, which is very revealing. The left is going after him. We've had some people on the woke right that are coming after him too, trying to undermine him, trying to force him out. And you have to ask, why is Hegseth such a major target? We're not exactly involved in any kind of significant war, so why go after Hegseth? Well, one of the answers is that you have control of the military this way. They want to go after Hegseth. They want to replace him with one of their own people. The Koch brother now has managed to infiltrate a lot of his people into the Defense Department, the National Security Council, but they didn't count on President Trump going ahead and choosing Hegseth. Hegseth was not on the list of people they presented to Trump. They had these lists that they tried to jam and manipulate presidents with. These are the people who are supposed to pick your next Secretary of Defense. And President Trump said, I want Pete. And he got Pete Hegseth. And they've been going after Pete Hegseth ever since. So anytime you see somebody going after Hegseth, you know what their ultimate agenda is, no matter who they claim to be, if they claim to be a Republican or a conservative or whatever. Second point, the Biden administration unleashed a massive campaign to purge the military. Obama was doing that too. This was something that was following up on what Clinton was doing. Clinton, Obama, Biden administration spent a lot of time purging the military, specifically of conservatives, wokening them, bringing a lot of people who are leftists into the upper ranks of the military, imposing DEI, and particularly during the Biden administration, forcing out people who wouldn't take the vaccine, forcing out people who had any sort of conservative views whatsoever. This was not a coincidence. It was not chance. It was not just DEI as usual. They were specifically trying to take control of the military. Why did they want to take control of the military? Well, we got a preview after January 6th. You had an unprecedented event, which, 20, 21, 24, there are a lot of unprecedented events, but you actually have Biden, the new president, supposedly, being sworn into office surrounded by military people. D.C. has been locked down. The National Mall is locked down. Huge numbers of National Guard troops have been deployed to D.C., keeping people out. Everything is under a military regime. It's like the green zone in Iraq there all of a sudden. Well, people kind of quickly forgot about that. We tend to quickly forget about things, especially these days. It's like the people being set on fire, one horrible thing happens, another horrible thing happens, we forget about the first horrible thing. But the post-J6 thing was absolutely a trial run, and the massive military deployment during Biden's inauguration was a trial run. When Biden gave that speech flanked by Marines, that was not a coincidence. It was not just bad optics, as the media put it. Again, this was a trial bubble. They were specifically trialing out declaration of a national emergency, martial law, bringing in the military to secure everything. To do that, of course, you need to be able to trust the military. Flashing back to the end of the Cold War, the Soviet Union, there's a coup, they remove Gorbachev, they send in the troops, they send in the tanks into the streets of Moscow. It turns out the Russian soldiers do not actually want to use force against protesters against the coup, and the whole government collapses. In China, however, in Tiananmen Square, well, the people come out, but it turns out that the Chinese military is quite happy to use armed force against the people who are standing in their way. So they want to make sure that the United States military is not the Russian military, it's the Chinese military. And to do that, they have to take control of the military as much as possible.
Let's go to a clip before we go to Inmar Marcus and Anni Cyrus, who are going to join us. And by the way, folks, tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, True Social. Let folks know we are live with our two-day International Worldview Conference today, December 4th and December 5th, Thursday and Friday. So tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, True Social. Let everybody know we're on the air live, and we got some very special guests talking about what happened in 2025, what they see coming in 2026. I'll ask that of Daniel Greenfield of frontpagemag.com and danielgreenfield.org in just 1 second. But first, here's a small clip from my 2019 documentary. This is Daniel warning several years ago about the cold Civil War. And he now says today, we're right on the line between a cold Civil War and a hot Civil War here in America. Watch just a little bit of this clip from our documentary from 2019.
But we do have a civil war. And why do I call it a civil war when there's no fighting in the streets? What is a civil war really about? It's not about the guns. When you are actually shooting each other, that's how a civil war ends. That's the beginning of the end, one way or another. A civil war begins with politics. We had organizations within the government, some people call them the deep state or the shadow government, whatever you want to call them, who are determined that they're the ones who are going to be in power. Sometimes they're subtle about it when they're within the bureaucracy. Sometimes they're very obvious about it, such as when federal judges announce that President Trump has no right to set any policies whatsoever that they disagree with. That's effectively a civil war. There may not be any shooting, but there's a power struggle. There's a struggle for control of the government.
Would you?
Wow. Well, there's a power struggle going on, that's for sure. All right. Tell me what you think are some of the biggest stories of 2025, and what do you see coming in 2026, Daniel, before we let you go?
Well, President Trump has been on a good run. I know some are critical to actually try and impose major reforms. We haven't seen much of that in the first Trump administration. The second Trump administration is actually moving forward. But of course, the big fight is going to be over Congress. The Democrats are betting that they're going to be able to at least take the House in 2026. I think they have good odds of doing so. And at that point, it's really going to be very much up to President Trump. Unfortunately, at the same time, you have the Republican Party, the conservative movement fragmenting, turning to infighting, in part driven by the question of who's going to succeed President Trump in 2028, and in part on, we've won now, let's fight over the spoils. All of this is, of course, a really catastrophically bad idea, but it's also very much human nature. And as conservatives, you understand that human nature is inevitable, and you deal with it rather than advocating that it should not exist. So we have to keep our eyes on the ball, on the big picture, which is really, are we going to turn the things around? Are we going to save America before it is too late? And there's a lot at stake here. The left really wants to divide the country. They want to divide into a binary, much has happened in World War II between communism and Nazism. They want to get us to the point where we find that communism is acceptable because the alternative is Nazism. And there are some people on the right who are playing that same Nazism game because they're happy to do it from the other side. The thing to remember, though, is, Nazism is National Socialism. So you have two sides of socialists with minor disagreements who are playing this game. And our mission, our job is to fight for the country that the Founding Fathers created, to fight for a constitutional America, one in which we actually have power, which power comes from the people. It doesn't come from a few DC elites. And President Trump has made important steps in actually taking apart some of the mass bureaucracy, the deep state, the vast government that's been created. We have a whole lot more to do. And we have to get serious about the idea that political power has to be returned to the people. And I think that's something we are losing sight of. And I think it is a very compelling message to ordinary Americans. We talk a lot about what populism means. Populism doesn't just mean cheap products in grocery stores. I'm shopping in supermarkets. I see how bad prices are, and there are things we should be doing about them, things we can't do about them. But ultimately, populism is about letting the people actually call the shots.
You said some things there that are so important. We need to have you back to talk about. The right, many on the right are being set up as the new Nazis, if you will, the anti-Semitism, and even people talking about a so-called Christian nationalism. And I hate that word because I think we should be talking about patriotism, and our own national sovereignty, instead of falling into the trap of using the terms like Christian nationalism. But people use it. I don't like it because, again, I think it's falling into a trap. Hitler was into a nationalism that saw the state was of primary importance, of fascism. Many of the Republicans are pushing a big government, big business merging together, which is a corporate fascism. So you see things going on the right. But then you see major social media people pushing this idea of anti-Semitism, really criticizing Christians, such as myself, that are strong Christian Zionists. You have this racism being spewed on the right. And that's very interesting. You say that the right is being set up as the Nazis, and then the left are the communists who are going to oppose, come and save you. The communists will come and save you from the Nazis. And that's how the two sides are being presented. And that's very, very interesting. Very interesting that Hegelian dialectic, thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, to create the conflict. And sadly, in the middle, that pincher strategy or scissor strategy, in the middle are the real conservatives, Christians, patriots, and Jews are being pinched in the middle. Closing comment?
I think those are all very important points. We should not have to choose between two evils, between Nazism and communism. We have to choose America, and that's the ultimate question here. Are we actually restoring America, or are we playing into the hands of various foreign and domestic influencers who want to tear America apart?
Tell us about your book, Domestic Enemies, over your shoulder there.
No, it's a history of the left in America from the very beginning. It shows that the founding fathers faced the same battles that we face today. This is not a new war. We've won it before. We can win it again.
Thank you, as always, for being with us and all your great work over at frontpagemag.com and danielgreenfield.org. I have those websites correct, right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Daniel Greenfield checking in today. We appreciate him. And if you appreciate us throughout this next 2 days, we're going to be trying to raise a lot of the funds for our foundation that we need for 2026. As you know, our foundation comes along and helps us push out programming free of charge. We could put all of this behind a paywall. And in fact, there are full networks. You cannot access them unless you're behind their paywall. We have chosen to keep education and ministry front and center. And so about 99% of our programming is all pushed out for everyone to see at all times. There are a few events we do that are for the paywall, but 99%, I would say 98, 99%, everybody gets to see and enjoy from the live stream and then post it back up online later for you to enjoy on demand if you missed it or want to watch it again or share with family and friends. Well, that's where our foundation comes around and helps us push out programming for free versus saying, nope, we have to fund it all with paywall. So if you appreciate what we're doing, including our foundation sponsoring our Sunday night church service, if you appreciate that, we need your support. So please consider going right now to worldviewfoundation.com. We're not going to read off your first and last name, but we'll gladly read off your first name and the city and state you're from. So we'll be reading some of those donations online here that you give soon when you make a contribution now at worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. If you prefer to give by a phone, that number is 901-468-9357, 901-468-9357. And there are people ready to take your calls right now if you'd like to make a contribution over this phone. If you would like to call in and say, I'm going to be dropping a check in the mail the next 24, 48 hours to the foundation, then you can call in and say that. We'd love to know that. Write that down and add that to our tally over the next 2 days. So if you're pledging to make a contribution to the foundation by check, you can call in and let us know about that as well. 901-468-9357. I want to ask Anni Cyrus. She's going to be joining us for the next 2 days to help along with Logan so that I'm not here stuck for 12 hours a day, 2 days straight. So they're going to help out. And it was through Anni I got to know our next guest. Anni, I want to welcome her first. Anni, thanks for being with us on our 2-day International Worldview Conference.
Thank you so much for giving me the honor to be here both days. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for being here. Introduce our next guest. You're the one that has helped facilitate these interviews with him. Introduce him, will you please?
Yes, Itamar Marcus. I actually had the privilege to host his webinar about 3 years ago for Front Page Magazine during the COVID lockdown. They had to move their weekly in-person meetings into online webinars, and one of the speakers for a week was Itamar Marcus. And he is the founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch. That's PMW. You see that logo regularly. And him and his team, extensive research and close attention. I have found so much information on their website, factual details on exposing a lot of propaganda we see and hear, especially since October 7th. They expose the propaganda and lies that comes out of Palestinian media. They expose the propaganda the kids in Gaza are being constantly indoctrinated with. So he's a rare gem when it comes to knowing all things Palestine and Palestinian.
Indeed, he is. Itamar, welcome to the broadcast. I know you're over in Israel, so thank you for joining us for the time difference.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Great to have you on board. I want to go to a memory for those who know is like Itamar is a great organization tracking a lot of these folks that are saying these horrific things and they track them, of course, in real time. But they have a clip, if I can find it back here. I think I just maybe went off the clip, but they have a clip of one of these guys, again, bragging that they're going to carry out an October 7th terrorist attack again. And of course, they want to bring this to America. Tell me what is going on there in Israel, particularly with what is derogatorily called the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, because we have been concerned right after October 7th. I was telling our reporter on the ground in Israel, Aaron Lavarco, that, hey, I'm concerned about Judea and Samaria. And that seems like a prime spot to carry out October 7th style attack. And now, of course, that's now being talked about more readily. But they also want to carry this out in America and other countries. Speak to that, will you please?
It's, first of all, the Palestinian Authority itself, and not just Hamas, and this is critical. The problem with the Palestinians is not just Hamas. The Palestinian Authority has a very similar ideology in terms of goal is destruction of Israel. And they themselves, their leaders themselves have been talking about doing October 7th over and over again. Most significantly, Mahmoud Abbas, who is being welcomed throughout the world as a hero and a moderate, his people have, not only have they never condemned October 7th, they continue until this day to glorify it and justify it as legitimate self-defense. One of their top leaders, Jabil Rajoub, went so far as to say this was epic, this was heroic. Mahmoud Abbas's advisor, a guy named Mahmoud al-Habash, has said repeatedly that this was legitimate. October 7th was legitimate resistance. So the Palestinian Authority is the problem. In fact, I insist that it was the Palestinian Authority which is controlling all the education in the Palestinian Authority. I insist that they're the ones who created the power of Hamas, because kids grow up in a PA school, whether in Gaza or in Judea and Samaria. They were in school.
Mm-hmm. Keep going.
They were in schools funded by the PA, and they all were promoting this kind of ideology. Now, because of that, the PA, anyone who talks about creating a state in Judea and Samaria and the West Bank for the Palestinians is guaranteeing generations of war, literally, because Gaza had a border of 44 kilometers and Israel couldn't possibly defend it. Judea and Samaria to the old border of Israel, to the old ceasefire lines, is a couple of 100 kilometers long, that entire border. Israel would have to have tanks literally in its cities around the whole country, which is something that's absolutely impossible in order to protect it from an October 7th if there was a Palestinian state. So first and foremost, everybody should erase that. Anyone who cares about peace, who cares about Israel, has to erase that idea of a Palestinian state from their mentality. Now, after Israel, of course, comes the United States. And one of the things that the Palestinian Authority has been promoting the entire last 2 years since October 7th is that the real enemy is the United States. In fact, some of them said, leadership went as far as to say, Israel is only fighting for the United States. Israel fights when the United States wants them to. They stop when the United States wants them to. Israel is the United States proxy, and therefore the United States is the enemy. We have top Palestinian leaders saying this. So when Palestinians think of terror, they think of it against Israelis, they think of it as Jews anywhere in the world, and they think of it against Americans because Americans are Israel's ally.
And now here is a clip from memory. This is a Lebanese commentator. He's claiming that Iran is preparing an October 7th attack, another one, and that they're going to launch about 2,000 missiles in one night to shut down your Iron Dome. And now, of course, you have your laser, and that they're going to do this to annihilate Israel. You'll have to read the subtitles, folks, but listen to this so you know we're not making stuff up. Here we go.
إيران حضرت 7 أكتوبر جديدة على هذا الإسرائيلي، والتاريخ سيشهد، وسجل كلامي هذا لديك أن 7 أكتوبر هذه المرة ستكون القاصمة والمهلكة لهذا الإسرائيلي.
أنا لم أفهم كيف 7 أكتوبر جديدة، يعني كيف 7 أكتوبر جديدة؟ هل يعني ذلك أنه عمليات سيقودها حزب الله على الشمال الإسرائيلي؟ هل هذا هو المقصود؟ عمليات يقودها حزب الله على الشمال الإسرائيلي، هل هذا هو المقصود؟ ماذا تقصد ب7 أكتوبر جديدة؟
حينما نقول 7 أكتوبر، لا ليس مطلوبا أن يكون 7 أكتوبر بالباراشوت أو الذي فعله الأخوة في حماس. 7 أكتوبر من حيث المفاجأة الاستراتيجية، من حيث الضربة القاسمة التي تلقاها الإسرائيلي. أنا أقول الإيراني الذي أطلق مئات الصواريخ يمكنه الآن أن يطلق 2000 صاروخ من الطراز الجديد الدقيق الذي يمكن أن يشل قدرات الإسرائيلي بليلة واحدة. نحن هنا لا نتحدث أمنيات أو لا نتحدث، هذا واقع.
This is not wishful thinking. It's reality. 2,000 missiles. I think they're going to do like 500 missiles at a crack, 500 after another, until they can overwhelm your system. What is the talk on the ground there in Israel when it comes to this?
Well, this has been reported, and Israel has basically said this is what's reported that they're planning to do. They have invested a lot of time and a lot of money since the end of what they call the 12-day war. They have been getting many deliveries, both from Russia and from China, of the components that they need for these missiles, possibly missiles themselves. And there's no doubt that this is something that they would like to do. They would like to be able to. In fact, they've said it. They said we learned from our previous mistakes, and now we can defend ourselves against Israel, and we will destroy Israel. They've said this already directly and probably a number of times. What Israel is saying is we are watching, we are carefully watching, and we know exactly what their capabilities are. And there's absolutely no doubt, and everybody who understands what Israel has learned on October 7th knows this. We're not going to wait for Iran to be ready. As soon as we see that they're getting close, the same way we went and attacked them before they could get a nuclear weapon, before those massive amounts of missiles are in place or functioning, we're going to destroy them all again. And before their air defenses are in place, we're going to destroy them all again. So it's unfortunate that we weren't, I would say, permitted. The United States was against our continuing the war at the time. We could have ended the war and possibly had the people revolt and replace the Ayatollah governments with a Persian, idealistic Friends of Israel group. That didn't happen, unfortunately, and hopefully the next time that we attack, and like I said, we will have to attack. The next time we attack, hopefully we will not stop. We'll continue until the people can actually accomplish their uprising, and then Israel will have an ally in Iran, like we once did, 5, 6, 7 decades ago when the Shah was there.
Let's bring Annie in.
Can I jump?
Yeah, I want you to jump in on that because we're talking about your home country now, Iran, Annie.
Yes, and I'm so glad you said it the way you said it, Itamar. Yes, it was extremely unfortunate that Israel wasn't allowed to finish the job, though as Iranians, we were watching it getting so close to finish line. I'm sure you've seen the videos coming out of Iran during those days, literally Iranians directly talking to Bibi Netanyahu saying, I got addresses for you, I'll send them to you, I'll tell you where to go to finish this. It is sad, it is unfortunate, but I want to move this unfortunate situation in to the recent ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. As of this morning, supposedly based on reports, there's just one Israeli hostage left to be returned, which I believe is a police officer, Israeli police officer. I am concerned that if this last hostage body, I should say deceased hostage, is received, is America going to push for the next stages of the 20-point ceasefire or peace deal, which all three of us are very aware that are not good ideas? Are you concerned with that, or do you think this ceasefire was not as unfortunate as the 12-day ceasefire?
This ceasefire at least achieved something positive for us. We got all of our 20 living hostages home, and we've received most of the bodies. And some people say, okay, it's only bodies, but let me tell you, when you listen to the relief of the families when they're interviewed after the bodies and they finally have some kind of closure and they have a grave, that was also important. So we got the 20 alive, we got the 30 or so bodies, we have one left. And by the way, this one police officer who, he is such a hero. On October 7th, he wasn't on duty because he was in the hospital awaiting an operation. He heard what was going on. He left. He went straight down, and he started fighting. He killed dozens of terrorists. Then he was injured, and people told him that he should, go back and go to a safe place. He wouldn't. He stayed in hiding where he was injured, and he continued fighting until he was killed. This is a real hero. The family deserves to have his body returned home and a proper burial. So that's the first thing. So, as much as the ceasefire promises Hamas almost a possible continuation, or at least Hamas saw it that way, we got something out of that ceasefire. We got nothing out of the Iranian ceasefire. Okay, now what about the second stage? The first part of the second stage says that Hamas has to be completely disarmed, and this is the concern now. President Trump is very interested in moving ahead with rebuilding of the Gaza Strip, and there are some that are saying that he wants to just skip because he knows that they can't disarm Hamas. Israel was very close to destroying Hamas when he called the ceasefire. Meanwhile, today Hamas rules the entire Gaza Strip, and we see they've with the money that they've been able to accumulate, they've been hiring new people. There are very few jobs around. So if a young man has to feed his family and Hamas offers him a job, he's taking it. There have been thousands of new recruits. In fact, today, one of the main figures who was creating a local militia to fight Hamas, the head of that main militia, was just killed today. So it doesn't look good. Hamas is in power. Hamas is going to stay in power in the area that they have. They have almost half of the Gaza Strip. Israel has 53%. They have 47%. President Trump has promised that he will allow Israel to destroy Hamas. And we'll see. Let's hope that he's not going to try to go ahead with the second stage to try to rebuild Gaza in the area where Israel is and let Hamas rule the other side. It would be a disaster if that happened. I don't believe Israel is going to allow that to happen.
I was just about to follow up with, do you know if two things. One, I'm a little confused. I understand rules, regulations. I don't know if he's guilty or not. I have not seen the evidence, but is this a great time for the Israeli government to try to drag Bibi Netanyahu through trials while he's trying to fight 5 fronts of war? The second thing is, does Israeli government has a plan to stand up to their strongest ally for once and say, no, you're not moving forward if next step isn't ready? Do they have that in place? Is there a prepared of, no, we're not doing it anymore. We're done. We're taking over the operation ourselves.
Let me start with the second question. Israel has made that clear. Every Israeli, and this is across right, left, center. The only ones who probably disagree are the very fringe, or possibly the Arab political parties, the members of parliament who are from the Arab parties. Everyone else in the Knesset agrees that Hamas has to be destroyed, and Bibi Netanyahu can come to Trump with that message. You can't bypass it because there is no one in this country, even the fringe left that wants a Palestinian state in Israel. There are a few people left like that. That fringe left, they want Hamas destroyed. They understand the danger. So Israel can come to Trump, and there was now. The interesting thing is, Trump was hoping there'd be an international force to destroy Hamas. No countries want to be a part of that force because no one wants to fight Hamas and lose their soldiers for nothing. To fight Hamas and to try to get them out of the tunnels, you need specially trained, soldiers who know how to deal with tunnels, who know how to fight in tunnels. No one wants to send their troops. So the only ones left are Israel. And so that's what I assume is going to happen. It's going to, someone will get our final hostage back, or Trump will declare the first stage is over and we're going to the second stage. And Israel's going to insist we get rid of Hamas or we don't move ahead.
Let's talk about outside of Israel. Islam is just taking over America. We see the left, the red-green axis, the Marxists, the Islamists, they are building their coalition so strong and standing up to the federal government and the Trump administration that's trying to remove some of these people from the country. But we also, of course, see that London, Europe, is way ahead of us in their demise and their collapse. Literally, London seems to have fallen. Here is a gal that's reporting on the fact that the mayor of London wants to basically dismiss that white British women are being raped. He wants to categorize this as conspiracy. Here is the Muslim mayor of London.
Now just watch his response. It will make your blood boil.
I asked you this question last week and you found every which way but not to answer it. Just how many grooming gangs have we got in London?
To avoid any misunderstanding, can she define what she means by that?
Yes, if you look at what's gone on in Rotherham, where there are people taking young girls, grooming them for sex, that is what I'm talking about.
We know in London there are issues about exploitation of young people, but they're not as defined by the member in her definition of what those types of gangs are.
So are you saying we haven't got the same sort of gangs that are in Rotherham, Bradford and lots of other places in the country?
Just for you misunderstanding, what does she mean by that?
You know full well what I mean by that. It's all over the television. You know exactly what I mean by that. These gangs of people that are grooming young girls for sex. Do we actually have those in London?
I'm unclear, Chair, what is meant by the question. If she could spell it out, I can answer.
I've just spelt it out. Are you not listening? It's the sort of gangs that groom young girls at a young age for sex. Exactly how much clearer do you want me to be?
That makes me so livid I could cry. That disgusting human being who happens to be the Mayor of London, who also happens to hold the title of the Police and Crime Commissioner as part of that role, that responsibility, obfuscating, gaslighting, bullying, belittling. These are little girls, underage minors, being raped by gangs in our capital city. You do not play games over this. If this was anybody else in any other position of authority, that clip alone should have seen his head roll. London Mayor, you're a disgrace. You're disgusting. You do not deserve to be in that position. Not when the welfare, the well-being, the dignity, the integrity, the safety and the innocence of children in the capital city is at stake. You are the most deplorable, despicable, horrible human being to answer that question like that. Now you get back in that seat, you answer the question properly, you get the stats, you hold the police to account. That is what you're supposed to be doing. That is what I'm paying you to do. As someone who pays taxes, living in London, I should expect no less. The country should expect no less.
Wow, good for her. But the question, are you aware of her, either one of you? And number one. Number two, how is she not being arrested and charged? There are people saying far less than that on social media that are being arrested.
First of all, what she's describing, I think the person who was asking the question should have used the word rape. And should have used the word immigrants, even if she didn't want to use the word Muslims, because that's what's going on, and everybody knows that's what's going on. And she sort of allowed him to imply that he doesn't know what she's talking about. But that's terrible. And by the way, it's not just London; it's all through Western Europe. And I don't know what the future is going to be. There is certainly outrageous going on in France. We know what's going on in Belgium. So this is a real threat. What's has to be understood here, it's not just the abuse on the physical level. I want to read you something. We recently took out, Qatar. Qatar is very much involved in trying to influence culture around the world. I say culture, meaning education, sports. They're involved in everything. They've given billions of dollars to universities in the United States, to schools, to elementary schools, and Europe as well. They're spreading their money around. Now, Qatar represents, is really a front of the Muslim Brotherhood, very close to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood. Now, I want to read something to you, and I want you to understand what's going on here. Again, it's not just the rape. I want to read you something from a book that was written by the head of the Muslim Brotherhood a couple of decades ago. And the name of the book is Jihad is the Way. And I want you to understand that I'm reading to you what Muslim Brotherhood stands for. And then remember that Qatar, that just signed a defense pact with the United States, believes in the Muslim Brotherhood and supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. Listen to what they write in the book. The Islamic nation can regain its power, be liberated, and assume its rightful position, which was intended by Allah as the most exalted nation among men, the teachers of humanity. Know your status, and that you firmly believe you are the masters of the world, even if the enemies desire your degradation. Then he goes on here to talk about more about this, and he talks about the purpose is to realize the great task of establishing an Islamic state, strengthening the religion, and spreading it around the world. This is what the Muslim Brotherhood is about. Now, let me take it from a couple of decades ago when this was written to an article written in the main Qatari newspaper, the official Qatari newspaper, Al-Sharq, just a few weeks ago, by an imam who is on salary working for the WAQ, the religious administration of Qatar. Now listen to what he writes. Just again, this is now, this is not in the past. Quote, in Allah's book, there's a precise verse that must be considered and not left misunderstood. Allah said, the Jews will never be pleased with you, nor will the Christians, until you follow their religion. This is a verse that establishes an eternal rule regarding the relationship between truth and falsehood. Truth meaning Islam and falsehood meaning Christianity and Judaism. Now he continues. Truth does not reconcile with falsehood. Falsehood cannot tolerate the continued existence of truth, because the existence of each negates the other. An existential struggle that does not tolerate compromises. The existence, he's saying, of Judaism and Christianity doesn't accept Islam. The existence of Islam doesn't accept Judaism and Christianity. This is from the official newspaper in Qatar. And then the final thing, I'll read to you from his editorial there. Islam is a religion that does not compromise and does not agree to a truce, does not accept mixing truth with falsehood. It came to destroy ignorance, not to coexist with it. Judaism and Christianity are ignorance, and it came to destroy ignorance, not to coexist with it. We must recognize that these a moderate, so-called moderate country like Qatar that just signed a defense pact with the United States is a major threat, and all of this influence that it's trying to create around the world by presenting itself as involved in sports, by having by hosting the World Cup, and by funding universities, and they're actually funding Hollywood as well. They put millions of dollars into different parts of Hollywood so that the movies will present Islam in a different way. Even if that's not a written condition, but everybody knows that that's what the impact that they're looking for. So this is Qatar, this is the Muslim Brotherhood, and then when you show me those films from Britain, that's part of the result of not understanding who you're allowing into your country. A person who believes that he is so superior to Christian and Jews that he can do what he wants with them. He can literally take little girls and rape them and gang rape them and have the gang. I hate that term grooming, but groom them for ongoing, as pets, as their sex pets. So this is outrageous. But again, it's not coming just for the physical, outrageous, disgusting physical needs of these people. It's part of a whole ideology that tells them they're allowed to do it, and we must be aware of what we're facing.
And well said, Itamar. Before we go to Nick Holscher as our next guest up, Laura Loomer has been about one of the most vocal supporters of the Trump administration. Goes right into the Oval Office, at least she has, after President Trump came in with his second term, explained some concerns she had, and those people didn't keep their jobs inside the White House, we're told, very long. She's ridden aboard Air Force One. She's been, again, a huge supporter of President Trump, Laura Loomer. I don't know, if she's got the access that she once had, but here's what she has just put out, which is very germane to what you're saying, Itamar. She says multiple Trump administration officials and, quote, conservative and, quote, social media influencers attended an event for the Embassy of Qatar at the Kennedy Center last night, including the FBI director, Kash Patel, who used to be a paid consultant for the government of Qatar. I didn't know that. Wow. She says Patel listed the U.S. Embassy of Qatar as one of his consulting clients under his company, Trishul, which he has managed since the end of the first Trump administration. It's worth noting that Patel never registered his lobbying for Qatar with FARA. This further proves that the Trump administration doesn't actually have a plan to include Qatar in the designation for the Muslim Brotherhood, because it falls on the FBI director to ultimately investigate crimes of Islamic terrorism committed in the homeland. And now Kash Patel is partying with jihadis. Qatar, in addition to Turkey, is the largest financier of Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. I have to say, as somebody who rooted for Kash Patel to be FBI director, this is incredibly disappointing to me. Additionally, Monica Crowley also attended the party last night. She works for the State Department as the ambassador and chief protocol for the United States. This is noteworthy because the Muslim Brotherhood designation executive order signed by President Trump 2 weeks ago on November 24th, he made it very clear that the 75-day review period established for possibly designating chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood would go through the State Department and Treasury officials. While Kash Patel is partying up with Qataris, with former DNI and Trump administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, who is a Muslim with Turkish citizenship, who also served in the Turkish army, it is worth noting that the FBI is refusing to call the murder of National Guardswoman Sarah Beckstrom an act of Islamic terrorism, because the FBI under Kash Patel has essentially reverted to Obama-era terms where they are more focused on not offending Muslims than telling the American people the truth because of Qatari influence on the Trump administration. According to a video I obtained at Robert Kennedy Jr., Fox News reporter Trey Yingst, who reports out of Israel, and President Trump's former campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, were also in attendance at the Qatari party last night. This is wildly inappropriate. It's a shame that my conservatives and media are too focused on being friends with Trump administration officials as opposed to actually calling out the absurdity of the FBI director, who's supposed to be investigating Islamic terrorism in the homeland, but is instead partying it up with the funders of Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood and social influencers like Rob Smith Online, who was paid to go to Qatar and promote them 1 week after President Trump signed the executive order laying out the groundwork for a Muslim Brotherhood terrorist designation. I like Kash Patel as a person, but if he wants to go to Qatar parties, he should resign from the FBI's director and go back to being a consultant for Qatar. As you can see below, Qatar owns Al Jazeera, a pro-Islamic terror publication that is on the record teaching Americans that the United States Constitution sucks. This is a standard for Qatar because as an Islamic country, Qatar wants to see the implementation of Sharia in the West. Sharia views itself as superior to the United States Constitution. The FBI director partying with officials from the Embassy of Qatar at a party where people were drinking tons of alcohol is a threat to our national security. Kash Patel should immediately release a statement explaining why he's rubbing elbows with the funders of Islamic terrorism. This is unacceptable behavior from the FBI director and should be of concern and alarm every single American. Now, again, she provides some receipts here. I need to look into this myself, but there you go. As we wrap this, is anyone aware, is what she's reporting, is it accurate, Annie?
Yes, it is. Yes, is Kash Patel the only official from the administration to be there partying, drinking alcohol? No, but the party took place. Yes, it is. It was a Qatari embassy or official party, and there were a lot of names there that shouldn't be there.
Now, whether they are there drinking alcohol or not, that to me isn't the issue. Is who they're supposedly partying with.
Yes,
right?
And here's the thing. I don't know if she has access to it, but I haven't been able to have any access to the Qatari guest list yet. We know the American guest, but I don't even know that who were the Qatari guests. Were they businessmen? Were they officials of Qatar? Were they Hamas members? I don't know. That's something I was waiting for you to get to where she's going to say, we don't even know who were the guests at the party from Qatar side. Because that was my first thing, like, who was at the party from the Qatar side? There's no record of, where I looked. Okay, I didn't dig enough, but I've just looking, I couldn't find many names of who was there from Qatar end.
Is this news to you, Itamar? Are you hearing this for the first time, or were you aware of this story?
I didn't know about this particular party. I'm still can't get over the shock of the United States having some kind of a defense pact with Qatar, which, you know, and I think that all those people who were there justified going there with the knowledge that Qatar, by having that defense pact, is no longer seen as an enemy. Again, it's something outrageous here. Everyone knows that Qatar funds the Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood was just turned into a terror organization. Al Jazeera supports the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatar funds Al Jazeera. You know, so on the one hand, you have so that essentially the United States just made a defense pact with a terror organization. So I don't understand it, but you can't blame the people who were there. You've got to, in this case, I believe you've got to blame the top that essentially whitewashed Qatar.
Now, again, I don't know if all the names of everyone she named was really there or not. I want to investigate this more. Any of those individuals, from the FBI director to Kellyanne Conway, any of them that were named by Laura Loomer, they're free to reach out to us, come on the broadcast, give equal time. We're just reporting what she's reporting, but we need to validate some of it on our own. But Annie, in closing here, before we go to Nick Holscher, are you saying that there is evidence that the people being named were at this party, or do we not know yet?
I don't know about 2 of the names that were there, but I just turned to my computer. I'm going to start confirming the names she mentioned, and then, but I know of the party. I know the reason I know, here's how I came to even know about this. Another account put out the information of what is Kash Patel doing at a Qatari embassy party. So from there, I started digging, but I cannot confirm the 4th and 3rd name she mentioned, but I am looking to see if I can confirm them for you.
Well, the whole thing is troubling. And again, we'll do our best to confirm what's being put out by Laura. And again, we would gladly offer airtime to or read a statement from any of those people mentioned that if they would like to send one over or contact us or even come on the air. But if this is really true, it seems to be a serious, serious problem. And again, like Itamar's saying, the fact that we're going to let Qatar have access to our military base in Idaho is just shocking. When they've been pumping, $40 million, Itamar, into American universities for propaganda, I guess. I mean, obviously they wouldn't be giving $40 million to teach Christianity, so they obviously must be for propaganda for Islam, right?
Yeah, that is what we have to really understand. And it's not just propaganda for Islam. It's for politics. It's for training the people. It's for having the professors, train the people and the students. And those students are to be the ones who are going to be going to Congress in the next decades, and they're going to be voting. I mean, we see the way Congress is already changing in its policies to be, very, very anti-Israel. And I wouldn't say it's very anti-Israel yet, but it's heading. It has people saying things about Israel that never could have been said in the past. And the more Qatar influences the universities and somehow can impact on the education in our senior universities, our top universities, the more that happens, the more we're going to be having graduates who are then going to be going into the media and politics and government, and America is going to change from these universities on up. And I'm sorry, on down. So in both ways, really. So it's a problem. It's a serious problem.
And we need to do a report on this at some point, Annie. But here it is. The Washington Free Beacon is reporting internal Hamas documents reveal terror groups' infiltration of UN-affiliated aid groups in Gaza. Hamas placed its allies into senior NGO, non-government organization positions, ensuring nonprofits can be exploited for security purposes. There's so much to cover. Itamar Marcus, you're doing a great job over at PalWatch, PalestinianWatch.org, PalWatch.org, and we appreciate your joining us today live from Israel.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Look forward to having you back. Itamar Marcus, folks, PalWatch, PAL, stands for Palestinian Watch, PalWatch.org. All right, before we go to Nick Holscher, we're going to be bringing you this international free online worldview conference Thursday, today, December 4th, and Friday, December 5th. And while we're also mixing in our share-a-thon, we are needing to raise before December 31st at midnight a big chunk of our budget for 2026. So we need you to call in now if you want to give by credit card, 901-468-9357, 901-468-9357, or you can just go online, make a contribution online right now at worldviewfoundation.com. Before we go to Nick, let me just thank Jack. Jack has just given $20, and Jack is out of Idaho. So I want to thank Jack for doing that. We also just have received a donation from Deb. Deb just sent in $26, and she is out of, what state is she from? It doesn't say what state she's out of, but we appreciate that, Deb. Thank you. We also just received from Janet. Janet just made a contribution of $50. She's out of Missouri, so we appreciate that. Thank you for that, Janet. Let's see. James just made a contribution of $25. James, he is out of Wake Forest, North Carolina. So thank you for that. We have one here for $10 from someone who just gave us their first initial. They are out of Warren, Michigan. Thank you for that. Linda just gave $10. She is out of Missouri, Forsyth, Missouri. We thank you for that, Linda. Let's see, who else do we have here? Alex just gave $200, and Alex is out of Purvis, Mississippi. So we thank Alex for that. Let's see, what else do we have here? Dick is out of Michigan, $50 online. Maryland. He's out of Maryland. So Arnold, Maryland. So we appreciate that. If you'd like to make a contribution online, you can do that right now. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com, or you can call that number, 901-468-9357, 901-468-9357 to make your contribution over the phone. What's that, Annie?
Do we have a minute for me to come in?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I knew your two things. The event, it was something I was going to actually bring up to your attention and our audience of, I'm kind of happy we're going to be on air live tomorrow at noon. So let me quickly clarify everything that was mentioned about that party. So the party was not, it was sponsored, not Embassy of Qatar. Tomorrow at 12 noon at Kennedy Center, there will be a World Cup draw. So it's a big event. We're hosting a giant event tomorrow, which I want to address at some point later about the security issues of the event. And then I want to address the party. The party day before, 2 nights ago. It was the kickoff of that party at Kennedy Center, one of the sponsors, Qatar Embassy. And I did just confirm the Fox News reporter name. She was there. So was Kash Patel. So I just wanted to let you know clarification. What the party was about, why it was at Kennedy Center, and then also just bring up the event that's coming up tomorrow, which we can discuss later. And I'm still looking for the other two names.
So it was not an exclusively some kind of a Qatari event at an embassy, Qatari embassy. It was at the Kennedy Center related to the soccer thing coming, and Qatar was one of the sponsors.
Yes. Well, I should be, okay. Qatar was the last host of World Cup. And the routine of World Cup is when the new host kicks off the World Cup draw, the previous host becomes the sponsor of the kickoff.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it wasn't that Qatar paid for the party. Qatar organized the party and the kickoff at the Kennedy Center through FIFA for being the previous host. So technically, yes, Qatar put together the party, but it wasn't an embassy-related party. It is the Kennedy Center party, kickoff party for the draw that is happening tomorrow, Friday, December 5th at noon Eastern time.
Does that change anything, though, as far as the officials?
No. Well, no, it doesn't, because it doesn't matter. That's why I wanted to bring up the event tomorrow. Brannon, tomorrow we're hosting one of the biggest yet most vulnerable events in America, and nobody knows about it. I guess I do because I follow World Cup. 42 countries are represented at Kennedy Center tomorrow. 42 countries who have made their way to World Cup. Their officials, not leaders of the country, officials of soccer, are going to be here with their representatives to do the draw. In the list of those names, guess who we have? Iran, Qatar, Bangladesh. We're allowing all, they're already in. They're going to attend Kennedy Center event tomorrow. It's a ticking bomb. I'm not saying something's going to happen, but no, it doesn't change Loomer's argument. Now, probably she didn't realize it's a World Cup because she doesn't follow the events of that side of aisle, but she is right. First of all, what does the FBI director have to do with FIFA kickoff party? That is, and why are we giving Qatar, as Itamar said, we're giving him a military base, so I guess putting together a party at Kennedy Center shouldn't be out of line, but that shouldn't happen either.
Right.
And then you look at, the ambassador to Qatar was at the party, so I can narrow back into her argument. The ambassador and FBI Cash Patel snap pictures together. They cheers together. So that argument stays. That's why no, it doesn't change the point she's making, but it actually makes it worse when I bring up the information of it's going to get worse tomorrow because it's not just Qatar. We have representatives from Iran in Kennedy Center tomorrow. Not just soccer leaders and coaches and federation, but we also have few of the government officials. They can't travel without them. And the list goes on and on. I have the list. I had it ready for today's show to bring up that pay attention to tomorrow at noon. One of the biggest events, though under umbrella of soccer, but one of the biggest events is taking place in Kennedy Center. And we're still chasing after our tails, trying to figure out which Afghan is going to blow it up.
Wow. Well, I'm going to get to the Afghans here in just a minute. Before we go to Nick Holscher, I want to thank Patricia from Atlanta, who has just called in and made a contribution over the phone for $1,000. So thank you, Patricia. Very, very generous. Thank you. Bill, I know exactly who, I won't give Bill's last name, but I know exactly who this is. He's a long-time listener and supporter. And Bill just called in with a contribution online. Melissa took that for $500. So thank you, Bill, for that. Sandy has just called in from the Milwaukee area with $200. So Sandy, thank you for that as well. Again, you can go online and make a contribution at worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com, or you can call. Melissa will take your call, 901-468-9357, 901-468-9357 with your contribution as we are involved in international free online Worldview conference for the next 2 days, as well as combining it with our end of the year share-a-thon. Let's go to, Annie.
I'm so sorry. One more minute. I wanted to quickly, first of all, quick shout out to my audience on my platforms. We are streaming this program for today and tomorrow on X America News, on my Substack, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. And I wanted to say, guys, all of you are familiar with Worldview Tube because you watch my show every day. But I wanted to say I'm riding shotgun with Brannon today because I consider Worldview Tube a home for my mission. So to my audience, don't shy away. It's end of the year. Consider it your Christmas gift to me. Hey, as you know, Monday's coming up, my birthday. Consider it my birthday gift. Go to website, make a phone call if you want to put in a check. I know a lot of my audience prefer checks, but this is for you as well today. This is not just Brannon's audience. My audience, I encourage you to get behind this wonderful foundation that's supporting this wonderful network that's a home to my mission. So just wanted to also let my audience know when you said, I'm like, wait, are they listening to you guys? Come on, we need you to chip in. We need you to make donations and support this network so I can continue having a home.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you, Annie, and thank you to your audience as well. We are going to break away from, I think, YouTube, right, Logan, because of the things that our next guest talks about, I think could get us in trouble with YouTube. So we're going to break away from YouTube at this moment because Nick is a controversial fella, but the truth is controversial, is it not? And I think it might get us in trouble. So we're going to break away from YouTube. You can watch it at worldviewtube.com, however, worldviewtube.com. And then when Nick has left the building, then we'll come back to YouTube. Do I have that right, Logan? I have that right. All right. So it's not Nick's fault that he's a truth teller. All right. So you can jump over now to worldviewtube.com. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll come back after Nick is done with his truth report. It's apparently too much for some people. All right. Joining me now is Nick Holscher. Nick, welcome back to the broadcast. Am I the only broadcaster that has to do that? Stop our stream on YouTube when we bring you on?
No, the other people have had to do that. That is for sure. Many people have been restricted or banned by YouTube for me saying the truth, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and isn't this, may I just do a shameless plug for ourselves? Isn't this why we need World YouTube? Because we're one of the platforms where we do speak the truth. We bring people on, whether it's Itamar or Anni or you. I mean, we cover so many controversial things that other networks won't touch, or platforms will actually possibly deplatform you and remove your channel. And we've worked really hard to build up a pretty big, what are we, over 50,000 following us now on World YouTube or on YouTube, Logan? We're over 50,000. That takes a long time to build that up. We're trying to get it to 100,000, but it's a very important platform for us. We don't want to lose it because we've worked very hard to get those 50,000 people, and we have a lot of our viewers that love it and use it.